Can you hear me? I pray that my words reach you like a thread of light in the dark before it's too late. The path you are walking is treacherous. You will soon reach a point of no return. It's just a matter of time. Mark 13:22. Beware of false light.
There are hidden powers at work in the shadows. Every now and then, an event or significant moment occurs, and if you're sensitive enough to it, you can feel their presence. It's a vague, can't put your finger on it type of feeling. The very same feeling you had when you watched Notre Dame burn. This was no accident. The history books tell of secret societies and the so-called initiated, Freemasons, Rosicrucians, the Bavarian Illuminati, Neo-Templars. They've all held considerable power at some point in time, and it might appear that these secret societies are the very shadows you feel in moments like this. Some societies might even think of themselves as these shadows, but they are not. There are forces much higher than any known secret society. The adept of both the dark and the light. And they've always remained anonymous, always beyond reach. The real Children of Solomon. Do the medieval cathedrals hold a great secret? Did they dig deep into the earth and create crypts to bring forth living waters that could heal? Or to establish a connection with the electric telluric currents? Maybe even to study the astronomical burning waters? And if so, then there should be clues or keys above ground, outside of the crypts, that suggest so. A significant key, stained glass, and the riddle of light. There is only one historical description of European stained glass making from medieval times. Just one, and it was rediscovered in the 1700s. Relatively little is known about stained glass windows in England, predating circa 1170. The use of early stained glass is not well understood. And this is because not much of it still exists today. It is extremely rare. This not only shrouds stained glass in mystery, but has also led some to speculate that the original glass was actually created for a different purpose altogether. For the true stained glass window appeared suddenly in the first quarter of the 12th century, and vanished towards the middle of the 13th. Just like Gothic itself, the stained glass window and true Gothic are inseparable. Like true Gothic, the window is a product of high science, a product of alchemy. What does that mean? True stained glass and true Gothic. It suggests that the original Gothic cathedrals, which arose during the 1100s, used to be more authentic in some way. And this authenticity just up and vanished around the mid-1200s. After the middle of the 13th century, men can still build on the crossed ogive, and even push the technique to astounding lengths of virtuosity. But it is no longer anything but that. Man the architect expresses himself in stone, but it is no longer the word. The glazier may paint his bit of glass with the highest skill, but it will never be anything more than painted glass. True Gothic is more than just art and style, more than architecture. After the 1200s, Gothic structures may have continued to push the limits of height, decorative carving, and painted glass. They did, but they were no longer being built for their original purpose, function, or meaning. True Gothic is the word. It is the spiritual and the alchemical. Alchemy is a natural philosophy. It can be interpreted as the process of transmutation by which to fuse or reunite with the divine or original form. This implies that at one period in time, the cathedral, as a form, functioned or performed on a transmutational or transformational level, seeking to create and connect with the divine. To transmute means to change or alter in form, appearance or nature, especially to a higher form. It means to change one thing into another thing. And the arch here illustrates what could be classified as an alchemical arch.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
You can? What on earth? This is a key.
Architects can push arches to the stylistic limits, but as we see here in Liverpool Cathedral, the right kind of arch is able to carry the sound of a whisper and amplify it to such a degree that the person sitting at the opposite end can hear it loud and clear. It transforms the whisper. That is true Gothic in action. It doesn't matter that Liverpool Cathedral is a relatively modern structure. It honours the Gothic's functional, alchemical form. Many new cathedrals and churches may have modern crypts, in keeping with the form's historical style. But are these modern crypts connected to water in the form of wells or otherwise? Water that's been transformed under the earth by the telluric currents? If not, then they cannot be classified as true. So what of stained glass? What could make it true? Light, if we are able to believe both tradition and modern science, is a combination of two things. On the one hand, luminous vibrations, and on the other, a particle of energy. This, in the sun's light, is active, penetrating, sterilizing, and relatively dangerous to life. Human bodies defend themselves against it by a process of pigmentation, which is strongly the fashion today. Its action is such that no alchemical experiment can be attempted in the light of day. No more than the experiment in human alchemy, which is initiation. As alchemists seek protection from the sun's light for their work at the furnace, so initiation requires the protection of cavern or crypt. One may then ask oneself whether alchemical glass, endowed with strange properties that it exposes to the light, does not constitute a filter, which, while it lets the luminous vibrations through, retains a particle of energy that is harmful to the evolution of man within the temple. And one may ask oneself whether the leaded glass of antimony of Romanesque churches was not a first experiment in this direction. What Charpentier is describing here is the profound duality at the heart of light. Light can be analysed as both a particle or a wave. The sun makes life possible, it makes everything grow, while at the same time it can be extremely dangerous and destructive. It provides us with the vitamin D essential for health, but it can also cause significant pain by burning our skin, or even kill through dehydration and heat stroke. Describing Rembrandt's Dr. Faustus, Victor Hugo outlines this exact duality. This Kabbalistic sun seems to tremble as one looks and fills a pale cell with its mysterious rays. It is at once horrible and beautiful. This is why both Christ and the King of Babylon are described as the morning star in the Bible, one the light of life and the other the destructive horror. And it's because of this paradoxical duality inherent in light that no alchemical experiment can be attempted in the light of day. Alchemists seek protection from the sun's light for their work. Could true stained glass actually have acted as a filter, which, while it lets the luminous vibrations through, retains a particle of energy that is harmful to the evolution of man within the temple? Just as the scientists dig deep underground to protect from cosmic radiation and isolate their particles, We have a similar image here. One of the alchemists, or the philosophers, using stained glass to filter and block the harmful aspects of the sun's electromagnetic radiation and ultraviolet light from entering the alchemical space of the cathedral. The philosopher's glass. The reason it is not possible to burn from sunlight that passes through a window is because clear glass has the ability to block ultraviolet B, or UVB, the wavelength responsible for sunburn. Clear glass cannot, however, block ultraviolet A, or UVA, and that's why it's still possible to acquire skin damage and genetic mutations from sitting in sunlight by a window. But if the glass is stained a particular colour, it then acquires the ability to block the harmful UVA. That's why some supplements, essential oils and products like beer are stored in coloured glass bottles. The colour blocks out the harmful aspects of light that degrade and destroy the contents within. The main colours of glass able to filter out the harmful components of light are amber and cobalt blue. Chartres' infamous stained glass is cobalt blue. One may ask oneself whether the leaded glass of antimony of Romanesque churches was not a first experiment in this direction. Glass of antimony, or vitrum antimony, is a glass made from a preparation of antimony trioxide. It produces a brilliant yellow-red or amber-coloured glass. For centuries, the anonymous alchemists, as adepts usually remain anonymous, have used antimony. Writing under a pseudonym, Basil Valentine said it was vital to make the stone of fire, and may easily be made glass. We have called it spy's glass, as if we should say streaked glass. The mysterious Artephius spoke of its importance in isolating mercury. Antimony and true stained glass appeared in Persia towards the 11th century. It came from the laboratories of certain adepts. These adepts were the anonymous ones, working in the shadows and who ignited the Islamic golden age of astronomy and alchemy. Knowledge of the philosopher's glass was transferred from the Middle East to the Christian West by these adepts. The origin of the word antimony is unknown, but folk etymology tells us it stems from the Greek antimonachos, meaning monk killer, and the French antimoine, meaning monk's bane. Both refer to antimony's poisonous potential if handled improperly. The very memory ingrained in these folk roots informs us that Christian monks were not just tilling fields and reciting passages. No, they were very much practicing alchemy. And the glazier was not just anybody. They were allowed to carry a sword. It was the art of window making that ennobled them as students of the great work. This was the true nobility of the philosopher or adept, and the external sign of chivalry could only be conferred by an order of knighthood. The guild of window making was no joke. It could elevate someone to the class of knight. Why? Cobalt blue and antimony amber red may not have been the only compositions by which the true philosopher's glass could have worked. No chemical analysis has so far, to our knowledge, penetrated the mystery of the Gothic window. And while contemporary archaeologists are just starting to use advanced technologies to understand stained glass, they acknowledge that unless major conservation works are undertaken that include the dismantling of the window and the removal of the glass pieces from the lead cames holding them together, sampling the glass for analysis is impossible. The original glass may contain substances not yet discovered and that work to filter out dangerous light. But there exists a much bigger problem. Not all the windows at Chartres are alchemical. A good part of them were destroyed, notably those high up in the choir, by a bishop who wished to be seen in full daylight. This was in the 1700s, the same era in which the only medieval text on stained glass was rediscovered. It's a frustrating fact to face, but the majority of medieval cathedrals and monasteries have either been destroyed or forever changed in ways that make it extremely difficult to understand what their original forms were like. Some of the oldest surviving stained glass in the world dates from the Romanesque Norman cathedrals. The first thing you notice when walking around a Romanesque cathedral is just how dark it is inside. It's as if they were deliberately constructed to be dark, to let in as little light as possible, and they rely heavily on artificial lighting to illuminate the space. Conventional history tells us that the Romanesque builders had not discovered the pointed arch yet, and therefore could not solve the problem of getting more light into their cathedrals. The pointed arch allows for thinner and taller walls, and as a result, larger windows. But Romanesque and Norman decorative arches show that they were fully aware of both rounded and pointed geometry. It seems absurd of them to just wait hundreds of years before using it to achieve the height and light that they desired. A more simple and realistic explanation is that the Romanesque or Norman cathedrals were deliberately constructed to let minimal light in. After all, only the choirs, the musical east end of these Romanesque cathedrals received a Gothic upgrade. Not the entire structure, the rest remained dim and dark. Why did the choirs get upgraded? Nor was it for technical reasons that Romanesque churches were no longer open to the light. A large number have no opening on the choir, but a dome niche over which a curtain could be drawn, as in Solomon's Holy of Holies. How interesting, the original choirs had no openings. Was the choir the location where the alchemical activity was primarily conducted? And could this be where the term dark arts or black magic stems from? Alchemical undertakings carried out in the absence of harmful sunlight. Art that had to be performed in the dark, that required the philosopher's glass to filter aspects of the light. And what exactly could have needed protecting from the light? The living waters, the burning waters, the great work, or something else? Has the true, original meaning of dark arts been corrupted to hide its historical significance? It was not for the simple purpose of disguise that early masses were said in caverns or catacombs, then in crypts, then in temples of stone that reproduced the crypt above ground. This was done in all religions anterior to Christianity. The Greek mysteries were enacted at night. Unlike the Gothic, Romanesque Norman windows are very small. The oldest stained glass in cathedrals is the Romanesque glass. It features a lot of blues, reds, and ambers. Chartres blue is also termed Romanesque blue. The problem, however, is that it's likely that no Romanesque glass remains in its original state. The oldest at Chartres are the lancet windows and La Belle Verrière, which shows Our Lady, the Virgin in blue. All three of these windows were originally made around 1145, but were restored in the early 13th century and again in the 19th. The glass pieces themselves may be old, but that does not mean that the arrangement and images are original. Glass was both expensive and fairly flexible, in that it could be added to or rearranged, and seems to have been often reused when churches were rebuilt in the Gothic style. Some of the earliest English glass, which make up the Tree of Jesse at York Minster, has been recycled in this way. Recently, archaeologists discovered that the figure of Nathan at Canterbury Cathedral is actually one of the oldest in England, dating to the 1130s. What is unknown, however, is whether the subject matter of the Nathan figure was preserved from its original context, or whether the figure was a portrayal of someone else. The study in general confirms two major periods of recycling or reusing medieval glass, the 1200s and then again in the 1700s. Some individual pieces may be the original philosopher's glass from the true Gothic or Romanesque, but the images and arrangements are certainly not original. As the 1200s unfolded, the original glass was reused and continued to be recycled in the centuries that followed. It's interesting, isn't it, that Romanesque carving doesn't overemphasize religious iconography, but features bold, geometric patterns, zigzag chevrons reminiscent of electricity, and naturalistic, almost pagan-like images that recall the way the natural world is continually transforming and transmuting. Did the original glass contain similar imagery? Perhaps it was just plainly coloured to perform the function of filtering out dangerous light. And were these masses, performed in the darkened Romanesque choirs, part of an early Christianity that's been lost or corrupted? One that had a connection to alchemy, perhaps a continuity with Celtic Druidism? Romanesque decoration certainly has a distinctive Celticness to it. It appears completely different from the Gothic. It is known that the builders of churches were united in fraternities. The Gothic does not follow the Romanesque. They existed together. The Romanesque builders carried on with their Romanesque, while the Gothic builders erected their Gothic. And the two schools did not mix, though both systems sprang from the same desire, namely, to make use of Earth Mother's gift, the telluric current at a given place. If the schools did not mix, then how did Romanesque glass end up in the Gothic cathedrals? Why were pretty much all Romanesque choirs rebuilt in the Gothic style? Could this be the lie? What scholars call transitional, the Romanesque being replaced by the Gothic? What if it wasn't transitional at all? What if there were two fraternities, two guilds, that ended up at war? Could there have been two forms of dominant Christianity during the 1100s, and one has been erased from history because it lost? What if this is not transitional at all? What if this is the stamp, the bloody mark of the winner? The Gothic asserting its power, its dominance, and victory over its Romanesque enemy. And now we've reached the next door. But before we move on, the anonymous adepts, the real children of Solomon. At some point in history, an intentional schism occurred within the children of Solomon, resulting in two factions perpetually at war with one another, the dark and the light. Just like the paradoxical duality at the heart of light, the sun's ability to promote health and then harm, there are also those that create and those that destroy, the good and the bad. But whether good or bad, fundamentally they are both light. Like the chessboard, the pieces of either player are both the same. They are equal. The only difference is in their opposition, the black and the white. All secret societies worship the light. Why? Because it provides the perfect cover for the real children of Solomon to wage their war in secret. And it's through this war that the Trinity of Light is accomplished. The sun makes life possible, but it has the ability to destroy that life too. And it's in this destruction that reproduction or regeneration occurs. After several years, the forest's fertility has declined, and it is full of harmful weeds. But the ashes of the fire that ravages and burns it to the ground restores its lost fertility. It grows back stronger and more fruitful. Growth, destruction, and reproduction. The Trinity of Light. If there were two fraternities, two guilds, two Christianities at war with one another, then the children of Solomon were responsible. Do the cathedrals themselves and the scars upon them tell the story of this war? Come, let's go. The next door awaits.